Hola and welcome to the Get Down. I'm Ritzy P. Let's welcome our butterscotch queen, Deborah Brooks. Deborah Brooks is a government attorney specializing in financial technology, including virtual currency, banking, and insurance regulations. Deborah also worked for the U.S. Department of Justice through the Competitive Attorney General's Honor Program. She served as a federal prosecutor investigating and prosecuting white-collar crimes, including bid rigging, price fixing, and customer allocation conspiracies. Before that, Deborah graduated cum laude from Albany Law School and was elected to Albany Law Review's Note and Comment Editor. Deborah also earned her master's, bachelor's, and associate's degrees from New York University. The Wyoming Stable Token Commission recently appointed Deborah Brooks as its new Chief Risk and Compliance Officer. She previously worked at the New York Department of Financial Services. Hola and welcome, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing fine, Ritzy. I'm really appreciative of how you glowed me up like that. Normally you don't think of yourself in that fashion, but I do appreciate the glow up. Thank you.
I'm just reading facts, Deborah. That's just the facts.
Just the facts,
So
ma'am.
you did all that yourself. Just the facts. So Deborah, could you tell us about your professional journey as well as when you first went down the crypto rabbit hole?
It's a great question. For me, my professional journey started when I was 12 years old. I went to my in the kitchen, and just for context, I am from the Bronx, New York, but my family and my roots are in the Caribbean. So I went to my Caribbean mother and I told her at the age of 12 that by the time I turned 25, I was going to earn 4 degrees, an associate's, bachelor's, master's, and law degree. And thankfully, she did not laugh in my face. She wished me the best of luck and sent me on my way. Needless to say, I did achieve all 4 degrees, although I was 26. So I was off by a year. So as you mentioned, my first half of my legal career started in the white collar financial space. I've always been in the space in terms of white collar, bid rigging, price fixing, market allocation conspiracies, financial crimes, and then switched over to DFS. Starting off with what I know was enforcement, I dealt primarily in investigating and instigating enforcement actions against mostly foreign banks who violated the BSA AML laws or sanctions laws. How I ended up in crypto, interestingly enough, also started with DFS, but more importantly, started with Girl Scout cookies. And I'll get to that in a minute. DFS, as you know, was and still is the leader at least in the United States, in the crypto industry. Starting when I joined in 2013, there was a push to instigate and release the first bit license, which means any entity or person who engages in what they call virtual currency business activity in New York must earn a license or obtain a license. So I was involved in some sort of fashion in Bitcoin since around 2013 when I joined, when Bitcoin was all the buzz at NYDFS. Fast forward a couple of years, and I want to say around 2017, I was just recently promoted into a different position where I was focusing more on enforcement actions. I was at the time, I am currently a Girl Scout troop leader, but previously I was just a Girl Scout parent. And I was selling Girl Scout cookies on behalf of my daughter, who is a Girl Scout. I went to my office neighbor, and asked him if he wanted to buy Girl Scout cookies, and he bought 10. So of course he was my favorite customer, and we started talking. He asked me what I knew about virtual currency. I told him, I've been hearing about it, had general interest. He loaned me the book and, encouraged me to read it. I read it. I got very interested in it. Then he invited me to do a week's worth of training, crypto training. And that was really fun and fascinating. And he asked me to join his group. And that group at the time was a newly formed group that is now what we call the Research and Innovation Division. I declined that offer, although it was a great opportunity at the time. I just joined this new enforcement unit, and I really wanted to put some cases that were stale to bed. So 5 consent orders later and over $1 billion worth of fines, I was ready to move on and went to my supervisor and really was looking for some stretch work. And coincidentally, at the same time, Twitter hack happened. And for those who may not remember, back about 4 years ago, someone impersonated a Twitter employee, was able to gain access to sensitive information and posted on the internet using the blue check marks when they were very valuable, impersonating individuals living and dead, and essentially offering, if you I'll give me 10 Bitcoin, I'll double it. It was a complete and absolute scam. Sadly, about $100,000 worth of Bitcoin was given away, but for the most part, the entities who engaged in the exchange services declined significant amounts of requests. I was asked, because of my strong investigative background, to help with the crypto team to investigate Twitter and write a report. So I was part of that crew. I liked them. They liked me. They asked me to join. This time, at that point, I was ready to move over, and the rest is history.
Wow. And being a Girl Scouts, I love how that tied. I was a Girl Scout as well. I wish that was happening when I was a Girl Scout. That would have been amazing. So you're a regular, and you talked a little bit about the bit license, and you worked on that. Can you kind of expand a little bit more on about that experience?
Well, for me, I worked in supervision. So my title was Deputy Virtual Currency Chief and Head of Supervision, where my task was largely to manage the day-to-day operations of the licensees. And at that time, there were about 30, 31 in New York State. And I managed the team who interacted and engaged with our licensees, like the PayPals, the Paxoses, the Coinbases, and so forth. So my role was more peripheral, but I was absolutely involved in not necessarily the selection, but really any questions, any concerns, any comments. The applications team would approach me and we would engage in extensive conversations. Now, recognizing at the time, it probably still is the case today, getting a bit license in New York is a bit daunting. Particularly, the requirements are largely straightforward, but the process is, for the most part, fairly lengthy. And that's largely due to a lot of circumstances that really is, unfortunately, not in the agency's role. Uh, Chief among them is a lot of the applicants really did not produce good quality materials and really should not have been part of any process. I think for us, we wanted to support and help them rectify the deficiencies, but I think that created significant backlogs as a result. So you would have years and years of waiting in some cases, and some licensees, giving them the chance to build up an adequate application process to be presented. And I think that really delayed the department in many ways for many years. I think another problem during my tenure was turnover. I believe that might still be the case today, but the applications lead, the individual that is responsible for managing the application process, they have cycled through maybe a handful since I joined. So you do have the high turnover, plus really managing what I call deficient applicants. I believe as I was leaving or departing DFS, there was a shift in essentially rejecting incomplete or deficient applicants and not allowing them the time to stay on the queue and try to remediate the problem. So that, to me, are the two biggest challenges. I recognize and I still talk to individuals who still express a frustration with DFS and the slowness of the application process. But recognizing that once you're in DFS and you're listed as a licensee, it comes with great benefits. You do have the bragging rights, if you will, particularly if you want them to be a state regulated entity. And that goes a long way, particularly if you are looking to obtain a license in California once they roll out their regulations, maybe in 2025 or 2026. Having a New York State license gets you in the front door a lot faster than if you have to build out from the beginning. So it's definitely, it's kind of like the American Express. Membership has its privileges.
Yeah. So I want to shift to your current role at the Wyoming Stable Token Commission as Chief Risk and Compliance Officer to advance their efforts to establish a state-issued stablecoin. What does that entail?
Well, I am so excited about this opportunity. And really, when I was onboarded, I was admittedly a little nervous about the process because although it's a government agency, it is acting like a crypto startup. We are developing the first of its kind state issued stablecoin. And that is one major differentiator between us and every other stablecoin that is in the ether. They are issued by private companies, private entities. This is a stable coin that's issued by a government agency. So my task is to build it, and I'm doing that internally, building out a compliance and a risk management program, helping with policy making, because Wyoming is very different in the sense that we are very transparent and we put everything on the website. So if you go to, and I can share that later, if you go to our website, you'll literally see almost everything. In fact, we had a 3-hour public meeting today where we reported to the commission, which comprises of the governor of Wyoming himself, along with 6 other commission members. So we are working on building our stable token out. And to me, that is just so exciting to see how it's going to play out in the space and how we're going to our goal is to elbow our way into the maze of stable tokens that are feels like every time you look up, there is a new stable token being issued, and really trying to stake your claim and differentiate against all other stable tokens.
Right. Now, how exciting that you're a part of that from the ground up. And like you said, yeah, it is like a startup, right? Because you're starting from scratch. No one's done it before. All eyes are on
Yeah.
you. And when the outcomes, everyone's going to see what you did, how you did it. And you guys are the trendsetters. So for compliance risk disclosures for digital assets, those are complex issues. How can state and federal officials strike the right balance between fostering innovation and upholding the highest standards of regulatory oversight?
That is a great question. As a former regulator and now in this hybrid function, you absolutely want to strike that balance. And ultimately, and in thinking about it, ultimately, you want to encourage innovation. Conversely, you don't want innovation to not have some form of perimeters or regulations surrounding it. And I was recently in a discussion with a friend of mine, and we were just having a general discussion on innovation and why oversight or regulatory frameworks are important. And they were like, yeah, innovation, no government, no government. And my response was, well, let's look what happened with OceanGate. And for those who don't know, OceanGate was a submersible that imploded near the Titanic last year. And that was because the founder and owner of that company, Stockton Rush, did not like regulation, felt innovation without any forms of regulation was prohibitive. And that was not in his vocabulary. And now he's among the departed because he did not want regulation and really tried his level best to eschew regulation whenever he could. So you don't want a Stockton Rush or an OceanGate. On the flip side, you don't want a regulatory body that says no to everything. So you wanted to strike that balance. And for me as a former regulator, I always listen to my licensees. I would have those conversations with them. You absolutely want to work with your regulators, because the worst thing you can do when you approach me was to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you ask for permission, I can work with you. If you're asking for forgiveness, I already know what you're doing and I kind of know where you stand. And that kind of creates an antagonistic relationship when you approach us with, oh, we did this. Can you help us out? Now we're further behind because you have to educate us. So working with the regulators is always that sweet spot. But talking to us does not mean we work hand in hand. And I really want to emphasize that to the audience, because a licensee works with the regulators and we talk to our licensees. That doesn't mean we're in cahoots. We're not working together to stiff the little people. I am working towards protecting consumers. And I think that for me is always When I approach these meetings, we approach it with what's from the tone from the top, which is protecting consumers. So when I have those conversations with the licensees, and when I have those conversations with my colleagues internally at DFS or former colleagues at DFS, we would always have that conversation from the prism of protecting consumers. The goal for us is to ensure that consumers who engage in the crypto space engage in a safe and sound way, to ensure that the products and services that are being offered to them are compliant, has been rigorously tested, that if things go left or sideways, the company has written policies and procedures in place to mitigate the problem and solve it to the benefit of the consumer. So that is always the prism I think many regulators have. And I've spoken to regulators at other states and at the federal level. And I believe we all have that mindset in our minds when we deal with crypto, particularly, is consumer protection.
Right. No, thank you so much for giving us that insight, because we returned yesterday from Washington, D.C. at the congressional briefing of women of color on blockchain. And that was one of the main topics of conversation, how to strike that balance. But I feel like you just gave that really great insight as to, you guys are looking at the prism as consumer protection, right? Because I feel that we do need some regulatory, policies and things in place so that everything that's been happening historically in the space continues to happen. And then we still get a bad rap as it's new for so many people. But I appreciate that insight. So founders and entrepreneurs have been central to the growth of Web3 and DeFi. But when you look at frameworks like NY's bit license, it's nearly impossible for micro enterprises to comply and become market leaders. So the next Congress will take up market structure legislation. Mm-hmm. What are your recommendations to ensure that the little guys can comply and compete?
That's a very great question. And in thinking about it, today at the Wyoming Stable Token Commission meeting, there was a smaller player wanting to gain access. And the way the rules are structured, at least presently, left that entity out of the prize, if you will, which I can, when you think about it, I shared his frustration in that he wanted to be a market participant, but the way the rules were structured and what we're envisioning, it did not really accommodate what he was offering. I think for starters, I know when I was at DFS, we actually did have a very small player that entered what became a licensee of DFS, and they were really a small company. So there is that opportunity to become a DFS licensee and while being a small player. But to your point, really understanding what the rules are and how to navigate the rules. I think that's a very important challenge, being involved in the industry, in the organizations or the clubs that are really essential and critical to developing the crypto, particularly in the U.S. With the new administration in 2025, you're going to see some fundamental shifts in crypto in ways we have not seen since crypto was first developed, at least the first Bitcoin rather was launched in 2010. So you're going to see some major shifts in crypto legislation. Technically, we don't have a overarching crypto legislation in the US. It's very frustrating, but we do have some bills that are circulating in the House and the Senate, although it's unclear if anything will be signed by inauguration day, but you never know. But for the small player, I believe the best defense, being a black belt in martial arts, is a very strong offense. Understanding the industry, being in the right rooms, really speaking to the right people who can gain you access to people who may help you. For me, a lot of times, that old adage is not what you know, is who you know. It's really understanding the who. And even as a small player, Wyoming Stable Token Commission comprises of now 5 people. So we consider ourselves to be a small micro enterprise ourselves, trying to become market leaders. And what we're doing, I think, was the right decision, which is really getting engaged, talking to people like you, Ritzy, and others, and letting people know that we're out there, that we're interested, that we have this product offering, and as such, really trying to scale our business as we launch next year. It's been pretty exciting, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but the goal is to launch our stable token by mid 2025. So
Oh,
yeah, so
wow.
we're moving
Awesome.
aggressively quickly.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I can't wait. I mean, that's going to go like this. I mean,
Yeah.
we're about to enter 2025, but I feel like you're doing such amazing work by even just being on having the conversation with us on the Get Down, because those that are listening that are interested in whether they're a small or a large player, I think some of the nuggets that you've dropped already is that it could be a relationship, right? Like you said, it's too late for forgiveness, like, but let's have that conversation and we can work together. And it's that relationship. And I love that you mentioned that. And you spoke about, what could possibly be in store, maybe before inauguration, perhaps after. It's going to be news. It's going to be changes that we've never seen. Are there any implications of that for the work that you're doing in Wyoming?
I don't think so. I mean, when you look at the current legislative bills that are pending, it is still keeping the dualism between the state and the federal government separate. I mean, in fact, I believe Senator Haggerty's bill, which was the latest bill, really makes it clear that the federal government and the state are basically running in parallel and have concurrent jurisdictions over stable tokens or stable coins. So I'm not concerned.
Okay, great. So let's shift it a little bit. Tell us a fun fact that most people don't know about you.
Oh my gosh. People ask me that question all the time. My kids don't think I'm funny at all. They think I'm boring and dull. But as we are in the holiday season, a fun fact about me is I collect Christmas ornaments. And I have over 200, although my husband just broke one. I love collecting holiday ornaments. I have a pretty tall tree. Yes, it's a fake tree for those who want to know. I know there's a big debate on real versus fake. I'm a fake girl tree and proud. So I said what I said, and I will have no further discussions on it, at least from my end. But I have a large enough tree that I started collecting ornaments from my travels. So whenever I travel, I scour to find a Christmas ornament that I can hang on my tree. And I have a few friends who knows that I do collect ornaments. They bring me ornaments from their travel. So you'll see from my tree, Christmas ornaments from Hawaii, from Aruba. One of my girlfriends went to Italy recently. So I have this really large, lemon ornament on my tree, which is pretty cool. My daughter did space camp at, NASA some years ago. She returned home with a small astronaut ornament. I traveled to Manhattan recently and discovered a Halloween ornament, which I thought, yeah, why not? So I bought that. So yes, that's a fun fact about me.
I love that. I was just having a conversation with my son that we have a small tree, a fake tree, same,
All
well,
right,
because
girl.
I'm allergic,
Mm.
right? Like fake trees unite, fake
Yes.
Christmas trees unite.
There you go.
And we were talking about that we will get a larger tree once we've collected ornaments. And he was saying, he's 12, but soul of a 40-year-old, saying that he wants them just like you to have some special meaning.
Yeah.
We're not going to buy a box of a bunch of the same ornaments and just to collect. So I totally appreciate what you're saying with that fun fact. I agree. I concur. So as we wrap up our conversation, is there anything that you want to compel our audience members to consider?
Read the news, pay attention to what's going on, understand crypto. I know it's challenging, especially those who are the crypto curious. They want to know what crypto is, but they don't really know. There is a great video. If you go on YouTube and literally type in Bitcoin and the Simpsons, the cartoon, it is a great summary of what Bitcoin is in song that is about 3 or so minutes long. And another fun fact, if you don't mind, they reference the island of Grenada, which is where my husband is from. And it's always interesting to see that not only did they say Grenada right, pronounced it correctly, which oftentimes people don't pronounce his island name correctly, but the guy who is supposed to be the representative of the country eerily resembles my husband. So you can take a look and see.
Definitely be looking that up as soon as we finish this conversation. So, Deborah, please let the audience know the best ways to reach you or find out what you're doing.
Best way to find out what I'm doing and to reach me is on LinkedIn at Deborah Brooks. Always remember the E in Brooks. Otherwise, you will likely not get me. I also have a consulting business called Gun Hill Consultants. If you can look me up online, you can send me a message through that way, and I'll be more than happy to answer. And just another fun fact, Gun Hill is not because I held guns. It's because Gun Hill Road is a major thoroughfare in the Bronx where I grew up. And that road was the site of a famous American war revolutionary battle, the Battle of Gun Hill Road. I learned that in the third grade in my public school. So that always has a special meaning to me.
That's amazing. The Bronx.
Yes.
BX all day. Thank you so much, Deborah, for joining us today. And special thanks to all of our butterscotch queens and kings out there for joining the conversation. And be sure to check out all of the Get Down episodes on your favorite platforms. Until next time.